The red lights flashed across the command center as Thektar stared at the holographic display floating before him. His 6 arms moved quickly over the control panels, while his main eyes focused on the data streaming in from the outer sensors. The Vraxian fleet had been hunting human ships for 3 months now, and this was the first real contact they had made with anything significant. Hyejin sat at her station near the back of the bridge and watched the alien commander work. She was young for a communications officer, but her skills with human languages had earned her a place on this important mission. Her job was simple: listen to everything the humans said and report anything useful to the command staff. The message had come through just 20 minutes ago, and it was still playing on repeat through her headphones. A human voice speaking in their strange, flat language about evacuation and desperate need for help. The voice belonged to someone called Captain Jiho, of something called the UES Retribution. "Play it again," Thektar commanded without looking back at her. Hyejin pressed the controls and the message filled the bridge speakers. The human voice sounded tired and worried as it spoke. "This is Captain Jiho of the United Earthship Retribution requesting immediate evacuation support for civilian transports. We are currently the only remaining deep space-capable warship in the human fleet after the losses at Proxima. Our defensive capabilities are limited, and we cannot provide adequate protection for the evacuation ships without support." The message continued with technical details about ship positions and fuel levels, but Thektar raised one of his hands to signal for silence. His large head turned slowly toward Hyejin, and his 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of either confusion or amusement among his people. "Did you verify this transmission is genuine?" he asked. "Yes, sir. The encryption patterns match known human military protocols, and the voice patterns are consistent with previous recordings of this Captain Jiho. Our intelligence files show he is a real human officer with a service record going back 15 years. Thektar moved to the central command platform and gestured for his senior staff to gather around him. The bridge crew consisted of experienced officers who had been fighting various species for decades. They knew how to read enemy communications and spot deception. "What do we know about this ship they mention?" Thektar asked his intelligence officer. The intelligence officer activated a new holographic display, showing a detailed scan of a human vessel. "The UES Retribution is confirmed as a heavy cruiser-class ship. It carries advanced weaponry and shielding systems that make it dangerous to approach without proper preparation. However, it is still just one ship against our fleet of 847 vessels. And they claim it is their only remaining warship capable of deep space operations?" Thektar asked. "According to this transmission and other communications we have intercepted over the past week, yes. The humans suffered massive losses in the Battle of Proxima. Their fleet was reduced from nearly 200 ships to less than 20, and most of those remaining are damaged or limited to system defense only." Hyejin continued monitoring the human communications channels and noticed more transmissions coming through. She quickly isolated the most important ones and began translating them for the command staff. "Sir, I am detecting additional human chatter from several locations. It appears their evacuation efforts are not going well. They mention that civilian ships are having trouble with navigation and that their escort capabilities are very limited." She played several short clips of human voices discussing fuel shortages, damaged engines, and requests for the Retribution to provide protection for transport ships carrying refugees from the outer colonies. The Vraxian command staff looked at each other with what could only be described as satisfaction. For months they had been hunting the human fleet across several star systems, but the humans had proven surprisingly elusive and clever. Now it seemed they were finally cornered and desperate. "How long would it take for our fleet to reach their position?" Thektar asked his navigation officer. "Approximately 72 hours at maximum speed, sir. However, we could split our forces and arrive from multiple directions to prevent any escape attempts." Thektar considered this option carefully. The humans had shown a talent for running away when faced with superior numbers. Their ships were fast, and they seemed to know the local space routes better than expected. But this time was different. They had civilians to protect and only one warship to do it with. "No," he decided. "We keep the fleet together. I want overwhelming force for this engagement." The humans may be desperate, but they have surprised us before with their tactics. Hyejin received another transmission and quickly began analyzing it. This one was longer, and seemed to be some kind of status report from Captain Jiho to what sounded like a planetary command center. Sir, the human captain is reporting his current situation to what appears to be Earth's military command. He states that his ship is operating at reduced efficiency due to battle damage from Proxima. He also mentions that his crew is exhausted and that several of his weapon systems are offline for repairs. The intelligence officer leaned forward, with interest. Can you determine the exact nature of their damage? The captain mentions problems with their main engine assembly and issues with their primary weapons array. He also states that his shield generators are operating at only 60% capacity. This information caused visible excitement among the Vraxian officers. A damaged human warship with exhausted crew and reduced capabilities would be much easier to capture than a fully operational vessel. The intelligence value of an intact human ship would be enormous. What about their defensive position? Thektar asked. Are they trying to protect a specific location, or are they mobile? Hyejin checked the transmission logs again. According to their communications, they are attempting to establish a defensive perimeter around a group of civilian evacuation ships near the Kepler system. The captain seems very concerned about protecting these transports. Excellent, Thektar said. Humans have always shown weakness when it comes to protecting their civilians. They will not abandon these ships even if it means certain destruction for themselves. The tactical officer brought up a star chart showing the Kepler system and the likely positions of the human ships based on the intercepted communications. The system had several planets, but most were uninhabitable. The humans would likely be using the asteroid fields near the fourth planet for cover. We can approach from the outer system and trap them against the asteroid field, the tactical officer suggested. They will have nowhere to run, and their single warship cannot possibly fight our entire fleet. Thektar studied the tactical display and nodded approvingly. The plan was simple, but effective. Even if the human ship was operating at full capacity, it would not be able to stand against 800 ships. With reduced capabilities and civilian ships to protect, the outcome was certain. Send orders to all fleet commanders, Thektar commanded. We advance on the Kepler system in 6 hours. This will be our chance to finally end human resistance in this sector and capture their technology for study. As the bridge crew began implementing the fleet commander's orders, Hyejin continued monitoring human communications. The messages she was hearing painted a picture of a desperate situation with limited options. The humans seemed genuinely afraid, and their captain appeared to be struggling with impossible decisions about how to protect his civilian charges. She listened to Captain Jiho's voice again as he spoke to someone identified as Admiral Chen on Earth. The human sounded tired and uncertain as he described his tactical situation and asked for guidance. There was something in his tone that reminded her of her own younger brother when he was facing a problem too big for him to handle alone. You certain these transmissions are genuine? Thektar asked her again. Yes, sir. All the technical indicators confirm authenticity, and the emotional patterns in the human voices are consistent with genuine stress and fatigue. Thektar made a gesture that indicated satisfaction among his people. After months of chasing shadows and fighting running battles with elusive human ships, they finally had their enemies cornered and desperate. The war that had dragged on far longer than anyone expected was about to end with a decisive victory for the Vraxian Empire. The fleet began moving toward the Kepler system with confidence and anticipation. 847 ships against one damaged human vessel and a handful of civilian transports. The mathematics of the situation were overwhelming, and the outcome seemed certain. None of them suspected that they were about to walk into the most carefully prepared trap in the history of interstellar warfare. 60 hours before the Vraxian fleet would reach the Kepler system, So-Young sat in her observation post watching the human ship through long-range sensors. The UES Retribution moved slowly through space like a wounded animal trying to find a safe place to rest. Its engine signatures were irregular and weak, suggesting serious mechanical problems. The ship's course took it on a wandering path that seemed inefficient and poorly planned. Sometimes it would change direction for no apparent reason or slow down as if the crew was having trouble with navigation. The whole pattern suggested a vessel operating with damaged systems and exhausted personnel. The human ship continues to display signs of distress, So-Young reported to the fleet command through her secure communication channel. Engine output varies between 40 and 70% of normal levels, and their course corrections suggest problems with their navigation computer. From her position, 3 light hours away from the human vessel, So-Young had been tracking the retribution for 2 days. Her job was to monitor the target and report any changes in its condition or behavior. So far, everything she observed supported the intelligence reports about human losses at Proxima. Meanwhile, Dae-hyun worked at his analysis station aboard the fleet flagship, reviewing all available data about human capabilities and recent activities. Something about the current situation bothered him, but he could not identify exactly what was wrong. The numbers all made sense, and the intelligence reports were consistent, yet he felt uneasy about the upcoming engagement. The human ship's trajectory is unusual, he mentioned to his supervisor during their regular briefing. While it appears random and inefficient, it also happens to bring them directly into our projected intercept zone. His supervisor looked at the navigation charts and shrugged. Damaged ships often take indirect routes. The humans are probably trying to avoid detection while staying close enough to protect their civilian transports. Dae-hyun nodded, but continued, studying the data. The human captain's communications had become increasingly desperate over the past day. Captain Jiho seemed genuinely terrified about the approaching Vraxian fleet and kept asking his superiors for permission to abandon the civilian ships and escape while he still could. The most recent transmission had been particularly revealing. Captain Jiho had spoken to someone identified as Admiral Park about the hopelessness of his situation. "We cannot possibly fight 800 ships with one damaged cruiser. If we stay to protect the transports, we will all die. If we abandon them, the civilians will be slaughtered. There has to be another option." The response from Admiral Park had been brief and sad. "There is no other option, Captain. You are all we have left. Do what you can to protect those people, and may fortune favor you." These communications painted a clear picture of human desperation and limited resources. Yet Dae-hyun could not shake the feeling that something was not quite right about the whole situation. Back at her observation post, So-Young noticed new activity around the human ship. Several smaller vessels had appeared on her sensors, moving between the retribution and what appeared to be a group of civilian transports hidden in an asteroid field. The small ships looked like maintenance craft or supply shuttles. "The humans appear to be conducting repair operations," she reported. "Multiple small craft are moving between their warship and the civilian vessels. This activity is consistent with a fleet trying to prepare for evacuation or extended flight." The shuttle activity continued for several hours with the small craft, making repeated trips between different ships. Some appeared to be transferring supplies, while others seemed to be moving personnel. The whole operation had the look of a desperate attempt to consolidate resources before fleeing. Captain Jiho's communications during this period became even more frantic. He could be heard coordinating the supply transfers and trying to prioritize which civilians should be evacuated first. His voice carried the strain of a man trying to accomplish an impossible task with inadequate resources. "We can only take 300 additional people aboard the Retribution," he told someone. "The families with children get priority, but we cannot abandon the others. There must be a way to get more transport capacity." The response came from what sounded like a civilian administrator. "Captain, we have over 2,000 people here who cannot be left behind. The transport ships are already overcrowded and their life support systems are failing." "Then we make do with what we have," Jiho replied grimly. "We cannot fight the Vraxian fleet, and we cannot outrun them while protecting slow civilian ships. Our only chance is to hide in the asteroid field and hope they miss us." Dae-hyun read these communication transcripts with growing concern. The human plan seemed completely hopeless. Hiding civilian ships in an asteroid field might work against a single scout vessel, but not against a fleet of 800 ships with advanced sensors. The Vraxians would find them within hours of arriving in the system. The humans seemed to be planning a defensive strategy based on concealment rather than combat, he reported to the fleet intelligence staff. Their captain believes he can hide civilian ships in the Kepler asteroid field while using his single warship as a decoy. The intelligence officer laughed when he heard this report. The humans are even more desperate than we thought. Do they really believe they can hide from our sensors using primitive asteroid cover? Apparently so, sir. Their communications suggest they plan to power down all non-essential systems and drift silently among the asteroids while we search the system. Perfect. We will simply conduct a systematic sweep of the entire asteroid field. Their ships will be easy to detect once we know where to look. As the Vraxian fleet continued its approach to the Kepler system, more intelligence reports came in about human activities throughout the sector. So-Young observed increased communication traffic between the Retribution and what appeared to be hidden bases on several uninhabited planets. The humans seemed to be coordinating evacuation efforts across multiple locations, she reported. Captain, Jiho has been in contact with outposts on at least 6 different worlds, all of them requesting protection or evacuation support. These additional requests seem to add even more pressure on the already overwhelmed human captain. His responses to the various outpost commanders became increasingly short and frustrated as he tried to explain that he could not protect everyone. Have one ship, he told a particularly persistent outpost commander. One damaged ship with limited ammunition and failing systems. I cannot be in 6 places at once, and I cannot fight your battles for you. The outpost commander's reply was desperate. Captain, we have women and children here. Surely you cannot abandon us to the Vraxians. I am not abandoning anyone, Jiho responded with obvious pain in his voice. I am making impossible choices with insufficient resources. Focus on hiding your people, and pray that the Vraxians do not find you. Daehyun reviewed all this communication data and tried to build a complete picture of human capabilities in the sector. Based on everything he could observe, the humans truly seemed to be down to their last resources. The Battle of Proxima had, apparently, been even more devastating than the Vraxians had initially believed, yet something still bothered him about the whole situation. The human ship's course continued to bring it directly toward the Vraxian fleet's projected intercept point, despite claiming to be trying to avoid detection. Captain Jiho seemed very well informed about Vraxian fleet movements for someone who was supposedly cut off and desperate. Sir, Daehyun said to his supervisor, I recommend we approach this engagement with additional caution. Some aspects of the human behavior pattern do not fit perfectly with our assumptions. What, specifically, concerns you? His supervisor asked. The human captain seems to know too much about our fleet size and movement patterns. His ship's course appears random but consistently places him in our path, and the timing of their repair operation seems very convenient. His supervisor considered these points, but ultimately dismissed them. You are overthinking the situation. Daehyun, desperate people often display erratic behavior, and the humans have proven resourceful at gathering intelligence. The important facts are clear. They have 1 damaged ship against our fleet of 800. As the final hours before contact counted down, So-Young reported that the human repair operations appeared to be concluding. The shuttle traffic between ships had decreased, and the Retribution's engine signatures had stabilized somewhat, though still well below normal levels. The human ship appears to be preparing for its final defensive position, she reported. All small craft have returned to their parent vessels, and the civilian transports are moving deeper into the asteroid field. Captain, Jiho's final communications before establishing radio silence were particularly poignant. He spoke to his crew over the ship's internal communication system, and the Vraxians intercepted enough of the transmission to understand his words. We are about to face impossible odds with limited resources and no hope of reinforcement. Many of you have families among the civilian transports we are protecting. Remember that our duty is not to win this battle but to buy time for those people to escape. If we can delay the Vraxian fleet for even a few hours, some of the transports might reach safe territory. The Vraxian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system in perfect formation. 847 ships arranged themselves in a massive sphere designed to prevent any possible escape by the trapped human vessels. Thektar stood on his command bridge watching the tactical display show green icons representing his overwhelming force. Long-range sensors confirm the presence of the human ship, reported the sensor officer. The UES Retribution is positioned approximately 2 million kilometers from the main asteroid field, just as our intelligence predicted. So Jung, now aboard one of the forward scout ships, focused her instruments on the human vessel. The Retribution looked exactly as it had for the past 3 days, damaged, slow-moving, and apparently struggling with basic operations. Its weapon systems showed no signs of charging, and its defensive shields were operating at minimal power. The target appears to be maintaining its previous condition, So Jung reported. Engine output remains irregular, and there are no signs of combat preparation. Thektar felt a surge of satisfaction as he studied the tactical situation. The humans had nowhere to run, and their single warship posed no meaningful threat to his massive fleet. This would be the decisive victory that would establish Vraxian dominance throughout the sector. "Begin the encirclement," he commanded. "I want that ship surrounded from all directions before we make contact. Leave no possibility for escape." The Vraxian fleet began moving into position with practiced efficiency. Ships spread out in all directions to form a three-dimensional cage around the human vessel, while maintaining enough distance to avoid any desperate kamikaze attacks. The entire operation proceeded exactly as planned. Daehyun monitored the fleet's movement from his position aboard the command ship and continued to feel uneasy about something he could not identify. The human ship remained exactly where intelligence had predicted it would be and showed no signs of resistance or flight. Everything was going perfectly, which somehow made him more nervous rather than less. "The human vessel is not responding to our approach," reported the communications officer. "They appear to be maintaining radio silence. Standard procedure for a trapped enemy," Thektar replied. "They know they cannot escape, so they are probably trying to think of surrender terms that might save some of their civilian population." The encirclement continued for 30 minutes until the Vraxian ships had completely surrounded the Retribution from every possible angle. The human ship sat motionless in the center of the formation, like a small fish caught in a vast net. There was absolutely no way for it to escape or even maneuver effectively. "Encirclement complete," reported the tactical officer. "All escape routes are blocked, and we have firing solutions on the target from multiple angles." Thektar activated his ship's communication system to broadcast a surrender demand to the human vessel. This was standard procedure before engaging enemy ships, though he did not expect the humans to accept defeat without at least a token resistance. "Human vessel Retribution. This is Fleet Commander Thektar of the Vraxian Imperial Navy. You are completely surrounded by superior forces with no possibility of escape. Surrender immediately, and prepare to be boarded." The response came after a long pause, and when it did, Captain Jiho's voice sounded different than it had in all the previous intercepted communications. Gone was the desperate fear and uncertainty. Instead, his tone was calm and almost amused. "Fleet Commander Thektar, this is Admiral Jiho of the United Earth Navy. Thank you for bringing your entire fleet exactly where we wanted it." The change in the human's title and tone sent alarm signals through Daehyun's mind. But before he could voice his concerns, something impossible began happening on the sensor displays. Space around the Vraxian fleet started to shimmer and distort, as if reality itself was becoming unstable. The effect spread outward from multiple points simultaneously, creating ripples in what had appeared to be empty vacuum just moments before. "What is that distortion?" Thektar demanded, his voice rising, with the first hint of concern. "Unknown, sir," replied the sensor officer, frantically working his controls. "The distortion appears to be some kind of electromagnetic phenomenon, but I cannot identify the source." So Jung stared at her instruments in growing horror as she realized what was happening. The empty space around the Vraxian fleet was not empty at all. Something had been hidden there, something large enough to create the massive distortions now appearing on every sensor screen. "Sir," she called out, her voice cracking with shock. "The distortions are not natural phenomena. They appear to be artificial camouflage systems shutting down." As she spoke, the shimmering effects intensified and began to resolve into solid shapes. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly revealed itself to contain dozens of large objects that had been completely invisible just seconds before. "Impossible," Thektar whispered as the truth became clear. The space around his fleet erupted with human warships. Not just one damaged cruiser, but hundreds of vessels of every size and type imaginable. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapon systems appeared within point-blank range of Vraxian ships. Fast destroyers materialized in perfect attack positions. Carrier vessels decloaked with fighter squadrons already launching. Yijin screamed into her communication headset as she tried to process what was happening. "It's not one ship. The humans have been hiding their entire fleet. There are hundreds of them." The sensor displays that had shown a simple encirclement of one enemy vessel now revealed a three-dimensional battlefield packed with hostile contacts. Every direction that had seemed clear just moments before now contained multiple human warships in perfect attack positions. "How many ships?" Thektar demanded, his command presence beginning to crack under the shock of the revelation. "Counting. Now, sir," the sensor officer replied with trembling hands. "Initial estimate shows approximately 800 human vessels of various classes." The number sent a chill through the entire Vraxian command crew. They had brought 847 ships to destroy one human cruiser, and instead found themselves facing an equal force that had been lying in wait for them. Admiral Jiho's voice came over the communication channels again, now broadcasting to the entire Vraxian fleet. "Attention Vraxian vessels. You are now surrounded by the Third Fleet of the United Earth Navy. Your ships are outnumbered and outgunned in a carefully prepared kill zone. This is your only opportunity to surrender." Daihyun stared at his tactical display in amazement and horror as he finally understood what had happened. The humans had not just hidden a few ships. They had concealed an entire battle fleet using technology the Vraxians did not even know existed. Every intelligence report, every communication intercept, every observation had been carefully orchestrated to draw the Vraxian fleet into this trap. "Sir," he called out to Thektar, "we need to retreat immediately. This is obviously a prepared ambush and we are in the worst possible tactical position." But Thektar seemed frozen by the magnitude of the deception. His fleet, which had seemed so overwhelmingly powerful just minutes before, was now trapped in exactly the same way they had planned to trap the humans. Soyoung continued monitoring her sensors and reported more devastating news. "The human ships are not just using stealth technology. They appear to have been moving into position around us for hours, while remaining completely undetected. This ambush was planned and executed with perfect precision." The human fleet began powering up their weapon systems and the space around. The Vraxian ships filled with the energy signatures of charging guns and missile systems. The roles had been completely reversed. Now it was the Vraxians who were trapped and outnumbered with no chance of escape. "How did they hide so many ships?" Thektar asked, though he seemed to be speaking more to himself than expecting an answer. Admiral Jiho provided the answer through an open broadcast to both fleets. "Commander Thektar, you assumed that advanced stealth technology was beyond human capabilities. You also assumed that one damaged ship represented the extent of our resources in this sector. Both assumptions were carefully encouraged through months of deception operations." The Admiral's voice carried a tone of professional satisfaction rather than gloating as he continued. "Your fleet's movements have been tracked and predicted since you left your home system. This entire engagement was planned specifically to draw your forces into an inescapable tactical situation." More human ships continued to appear as additional stealth systems deactivated. The Vraxian fleet found itself not just outnumbered but completely surrounded at close range by an enemy that had achieved perfect surprise. Every advantage they had counted on had turned into a liability. "The civilian transports," Thektar said suddenly. "What about the civilian evacuation ships?" "What civilian ships?" Admiral Jiho replied with what sounded like genuine amusement. "Commander, there are no civilians in this system. Every signal you intercepted, every desperate communication, every plea for help was part of an elaborate performance designed to make you confident and careless." The revelation hit the Vraxian command crew like a physical blow. Not only had the humans hidden their fleet and drawn them into a trap, but every piece of intelligence that had guided their decision-making had been deliberately falsified. The silence that followed Admiral Jiho's surrender demand stretched across the battlefield like a physical weight. 800 Vraxian ships hung motionless in space, completely surrounded by an equal number of human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. The tactical situation was so hopeless that even experienced military officers struggled to comprehend how completely they had been outmaneuvered. So-young frantically worked her communication equipment, trying to intercept human tactical transmissions to understand how this impossible ambush had been arranged. What she discovered made the Vraxian defeat even more devastating. The humans were not celebrating or showing surprise at their success. They were calmly executing a plan that had obviously been rehearsed many times. Target Priority Alpha is the command ship cluster in Grid 77, came a calm human voice over the tactical frequency. Beta Squadron maintains firing solutions on the heavy cruiser formation. Gamma Squadron ready to engage if any enemy vessel attempts to break formation. The communications were professional and efficient, showing no excitement or uncertainty. These humans were following a predetermined script that covered every possible Vraxian response. So-young realized with growing horror that the human fleet had war-gamed this exact scenario and prepared for every contingency. They planned this entire engagement in advance, she reported to her ship's command crew. The human communication suggests they have been preparing for this specific battle for months or possibly years. Meanwhile, Daehyun listened to more intercepted human transmissions and began to understand the true scope of the deception that had been played against his fleet. A human officer identified as Captain Minho was coordinating with multiple ship commanders, and his words revealed the depth of their preparation. Stealth grid deployment was successful across all sectors, Minho reported to someone identified as Fleet Admiral Park. Enemy fleet positioning matches Prediction Model 7 with 96% accuracy. All human vessels are in optimal firing positions as planned. Acknowledged, Captain, came the reply from Admiral Park. Initiate Phase 3 of the containment protocol. Begin selective target marking, but hold fire until the Vraxians make their decision about surrender. Daehyun translated these communications for his superiors and watched their faces grow pale as the implications became clear. The humans had not just hidden their fleet. They had predicted exactly how the Vraxian force would approach and position themselves for the attack. Every move Thektar's fleet had made had been anticipated and planned for in advance. Sir, Daehyun said to Thektar, based on these intercepted communications, the humans appear to have been studying our tactical doctrines and fleet movements for an extended period. This ambush was designed specifically to counter our standard encirclement procedures. Thektar stared at the tactical display showing his fleet completely surrounded and trapped. Every ship was covered by multiple human weapon systems and there was no direction they could move without coming under concentrated fire. The humans had achieved a perfect tactical position through superior planning and deception. How long have they been watching us? He asked quietly. Before Daehyun could respond, Admiral Jiho's voice came over the communication channels again, this time addressing the question directly. Commander Thektar, Human Intelligence Services have been monitoring Vraxian fleet activities for approximately 18 months. We have detailed records of your tactical preferences, command decisions, and strategic thinking patterns. The Admiral's tone remained professional, but there was an undertone of satisfaction as he continued. This engagement was specifically designed as a test of human strategic capabilities against a superior numerically equipped opponent using advanced deception and concealment technologies. Hijin worked frantically to intercept more human communications and discovered that their defeat was even more complete than anyone had realized. The humans were not just executing a successful ambush. They were treating the entire battle as a training exercise and educational opportunity. Human tactical instructors are providing real-time analysis of Vraxian decision-making to their junior officers, she reported with disbelief. They are using our fleet as a case study in tactical awareness and strategic planning. Indeed, the intercepted communications included conversations between human officers that sounded more like classroom discussions than combat operations. A human identified as Commander Yunwoo was explaining to younger officers how the Vraxian approach had been predicted and countered. Notice how the enemy fleet maintained standard formation spacing during their approach, Yunwoo observed. This made it easy for our concealed vessels to position themselves for maximum effectiveness. The Vraxians followed their doctrine exactly as our analysts predicted they would. "What about their sensor sweeps?" asked a younger human voice. "Shouldn't they have detected our stealth fields?" The stealth technology used in this operation represents advances that are approximately 10 years ahead of known Vraxian detection capabilities, Yunwu replied. Additionally, our ships were positioned in sensor shadow zones created by natural gravitational distortions in this system. Daihyun listened to these educational exchanges with a mixture of admiration and horror. The humans were so confident in their tactical superiority that they were using live combat as a teaching opportunity for their inexperienced personnel. The Vraxian fleet had become an unwilling participant in a human military training exercise. More intercepted communications revealed the true scope of human preparation for this engagement. Captain Minho could be heard coordinating with specialists who had been studying Vraxian psychology and decision-making patterns for months. Behavioral analysis confirms that the enemy commander is experiencing decision paralysis consistent with Prediction Model 12, reported a human analyst. Recommend maintaining current containment posture while enemy leadership processes their tactical situation. Acknowledged, Minho replied. All units maintain position and await further orders. Do not engage unless enemy vessels attempt to break containment or initiate hostilities. The professional calm of the human communication stood in stark contrast to the growing panic aboard Vraxian ships. So-young could hear her own ship's crew discussing options in increasingly desperate terms, while the humans seemed completely relaxed about the entire situation. They are treating this like a routine operation, she reported. The human fleet shows no signs of stress or uncertainty about the outcome of this engagement. Indeed, the human communication suggested that they had considered this battle won before it even began. Their planning had been so thorough and their execution so precise that the outcome had never been in doubt from their perspective. Admiral Jiho addressed the Vraxian fleet again, this time offering insight into human strategic thinking. Commander, Thektar, your fleet was selected for this engagement because our analysis indicated it represented the best example of standard Vraxian tactical doctrine and command structure. Defeating you decisively will demonstrate human capabilities to your entire military hierarchy. The admiral paused before continuing with what sounded like genuine respect. Your reputation as a skilled commander made you the ideal opponent for this demonstration. A victory against a lesser force would not have provided the same strategic impact. Thektar felt the bitter irony of being complimented by an enemy who had just made him look foolish in front of his entire fleet. The humans had not just defeated him. They had used his own competence against him by predicting exactly how a skilled Vraxian commander would respond to the tactical situation they had created. Time remaining for surrender decision is 30 seconds. Announced a human communications officer. After that time, we will begin selective engagement of enemy vessels to demonstrate our tactical capabilities. Daehyun understood that the humans were offering one last chance for surrender before beginning a systematic destruction of the Vraxian fleet. Their positioning and preparation made resistance hopeless, but they were giving their enemy the opportunity to avoid unnecessary casualties. More intercepted communications revealed that the human fleet had prepared for multiple possible Vraxian responses. Captain Minho was reviewing contingency plans with his staff, covering everything from attempted breakout attacks to negotiated surrender terms. If enemy vessels attempt to fight their way out, priority targets are the command ships and heavy units, Minho instructed. If they request surrender negotiations, we follow Protocol 7 with Admiral Park handling all diplomatic communications. What if they attempt to self-destruct rather than surrender? Asked a human subordinate. Our analysis suggests this outcome has less than 5% probability, Minho replied. Vraxian military culture emphasizes survival and regrouping rather than heroic last stands. However, we have containment procedures ready if necessary. The depth of human preparation was staggering. They had not only planned the perfect ambush, but had also analyzed every possible Vraxian response and prepared appropriate countermeasures. Nothing the Vraxian fleet could do would surprise them or change the outcome of the engagement. 10 seconds remaining, announced the human communications officer. Thektar looked around his command bridge one final time. 3 hours after the surrender, Daehyun found himself aboard the human vessel UES Harmony as a prisoner of war. The ship that had captured his damaged scout vessel was nothing like what he had expected from his previous encounters with human technology. Everything was clean, efficient, and surprisingly advanced for a species that was supposed to be young and inexperienced in space warfare. Captain Yunwoo sat across from Daehyun in what appeared to be a comfortable meeting room rather than a prison cell. The human officer looked tired but satisfied as he reviewed a datapad containing information about the captured Vraxian personnel. "You are Senior Analyst Daehyun of the Vraxian 6th Survey Fleet," Captain Yunwoo said in surprisingly good Vraxian language. "Our records indicate you were the only member of your command staff who expressed doubts about this engagement." Daehyun nodded slowly, still struggling to understand how completely his fleet had been deceived. "Your information about our internal discussions is very detailed for an enemy force. We have been monitoring Vraxian communications for over a year," Yunwoo replied calmly. "Your concerns about human capabilities were noted and respected by our intelligence analysts." The casual admission that humans had been intercepting Vraxian military communications for months sent another chill through Daehyun's mind. Everything his people had believed about human technological limitations had apparently been wrong. "How long have you been planning this engagement?" Daehyun asked. Captain Yunwoo consulted his datapad before answering. "The initial planning began 14 months ago, when our strategic analysts identified your fleet as the optimal target for this operation. The detailed preparation started 8 months ago, when we confirmed your fleet's mission parameters and likely approach routes." The revelation that humans had been planning this battle for over a year, while the Vraxians believed they were hunting a desperate enemy, was almost too much for Daehyun to process. Every decision his fleet had made had been anticipated and countered by an enemy that was thinking years ahead. Meanwhile, on another human ship, Hyejin was having a similar conversation with a human intelligence officer identified as Commander Na-young. The human woman was professional but friendly as she explained what had really happened during the past few months. "The communications you intercepted from Captain Jiho were all genuine," Na-young explained. "However, they were being broadcast from a specially equipped facility on Earth rather than from the ship you believed you were tracking." Hyejin stared at the human officer in disbelief. "You mean the entire desperate evacuation scenario was fabricated?" "Not fabricated. Carefully constructed," Na-young corrected. "Every transmission was designed to reinforce your existing assumptions about human capabilities while guiding your fleet toward the tactical situation we wanted to create." The human officer activated a holographic display showing the real timeline of events leading up to the battle. Instead of a desperate last stand by the sole surviving human warship, the display revealed a carefully orchestrated deception operation involving hundreds of personnel and multiple facilities. "The voice you heard as Captain Jiho belongs to Admiral Jiho Park, one of our most experienced strategic planners," Na-young continued. "He has been studying Vraxian tactical doctrine for 3 years and specifically designed this operation to exploit your known decision-making patterns." Hyejin felt sick as she realized how completely she had been fooled by the human deception. Every transmission she had analyzed and reported to her superiors had been carefully crafted to lead them toward this trap. Back aboard the UES Harmony, Captain Yunwoo was explaining to Daehyun how the human stealth technology had remained undetected for so long. The explanation revealed technological capabilities that were far beyond what anyone in the Vraxian military had believed possible. "Our ships were equipped with adaptive camouflage systems that can mimic natural space phenomena," Yunwoo said. "To your sensors, our fleet appeared to be nothing more than gravitational distortions and background radiation." "How long have humans possessed this technology?" Daehyun asked. "The basic stealth systems have been operational for approximately 5 years, Yunwoo replied. "However, the advanced adaptive camouflage used in this operation represents the latest generation of our defensive technology." Daehyun realized that human technological development had been proceeding much faster than Vraxian intelligence had estimated. While his people had believed they were dealing with a primitive species just beginning to explore space, the humans had actually developed military capabilities that surpassed Vraxian technology in several key areas. the irregular engine signatures. We observed from your ship, Daehyun said. Were those also part of the deception? Captain Yunwoo smiled slightly. The Retribution was operating under simulated damage conditions to make the performance appear realistic. Our engineers spent weeks calculating exactly how a damaged ship would behave so that your observations would confirm the deception. The level of detail and preparation was staggering. The humans had not just hidden their fleet, they had created a completely false reality for the Vraxians to observe and analyze. Every piece of evidence that had guided Vraxian decision-making had been carefully manufactured to support the deception. On the command ship of the human fleet, Admiral Jiho was conducting the formal surrender ceremony with Fleet Commander Thektar. The Vraxian commander looked defeated and confused as he tried to understand how his overwhelming advantage had been turned into such a complete disaster. I must ask, Thektar said to Admiral Jiho, how did you predict our tactical response so accurately? We followed standard Vraxian doctrine, but you seem to know exactly what we would do. Admiral Jiho gestured toward a group of human officers who were observing the ceremony. Commander, we have been studying your military history, tactical, manuals, and command decisions for several years. Human military academies now include courses on Vraxian strategic thinking as part of our standard curriculum. The Admiral paused before continuing with what sounded like genuine respect. Your tactical doctrine is well designed and has served your people effectively for many years. However, doctrine becomes a liability when your enemy understands it better than you do. Thektar felt the bitter truth of those words. The Vraxians had followed their established procedures exactly, which had made their behavior completely predictable to an enemy who had studied those procedures in detail. The question you asked earlier about why we sent just one ship requires clarification, Admiral Jiho continued. We did not send one ship. We sent 847 ships, exactly matching the size of your fleet. However, we made sure you could only detect one of them. The Admiral activated a holographic display showing the true disposition of forces during the engagement. Instead of one desperate human ship facing overwhelming odds, the display revealed 2 equal fleets with the humans holding every possible tactical advantage through superior positioning and preparation. The most dangerous human ship, Admiral Jiho explained, is not any particular vessel with advanced weapons or superior armor. The most dangerous human ship is the human mind that thinks beyond what the enemy expects to see. Back aboard the Sierra, UES Harmony Commander Nayoung was explaining to Hyejin how this engagement fit into a larger human strategic plan for dealing with hostile alien species. The explanation revealed that the Battle of Kepler was not an isolated event, but part of a comprehensive approach to interstellar relations. This operation serves multiple purposes, Nayoung said. It demonstrates human military capabilities to potential enemies, provides valuable training for our personnel, and establishes our credibility as a spacefaring civilization that cannot be easily conquered. What happens to our fleet now? Hyejin asked. Your ships will be temporarily impounded while diplomatic negotiations proceed between our governments, Nayoung replied. We hope this demonstration will convince Vraxian leadership that continued hostilities would be both costly and unnecessary. The human officer's tone suggested that humanity preferred peaceful coexistence, but was prepared for continued conflict, if necessary. The Battle of Kepler had been designed to make peace more attractive than war by demonstrating the true cost of underestimating human capabilities. As the surrender procedures continued, more details emerged about the scope of human preparation for this engagement. The operation had involved not just the fleet personnel, but also intelligence specialists, technology developers, strategic planners, and diplomatic experts working together for over a year. Captain Yunwoo explained to Daehyun how human military doctrine emphasized adaptability and innovation over raw firepower. We studied every major space battle in recorded history, he said. Human, Vraxian, and dozens of other species. We learned from everyone's successes and failures to develop our own approach to warfare. Your species learns very quickly, Daehyun observed. We have to, Yunwoo replied. Humans are not the strongest or most technologically advanced species in this galaxy. Our advantage comes from our ability to analyze, adapt, and innovate faster than our opponents expect. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement that diplomatic representatives from Earth had arrived to begin formal negotiations with the Vraxian government.